How's it guys, this is Dayvy FPL and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video we're going to be talking about the Game Week 16 preview as well as a little wildcard update at the end of the video. As I said, this is the preview, quick turnaround from Game Week 15 to 16, that's why I'm coming at you with this preview after the inverted commas team selection, as I wanted to get that team selection out as soon as possible, but there are still a lot of talking points, especially about the wildcard that I wanted to get into. So in this video we're going to be covering, should you take KDB out? Should you bring Son, Kane, or both of them, or neither of them for Game Week 16 and 17 if you are in a wild card? And then finally, we're going to wrap it up with the captaincy. So that's something you're interested in. Sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So the watch list for a wildcard weekend is a little bit useless, so think about this as a watch list for the games that remain in Game Week 15. That's why I have Robertson here. I have Robertson in my Game Week 15 side already, so you might not know why he's on the watch list because he's already in the squad, but I'm going to be monitoring these players in the remainder of the Game Week 15 games. Liverpool play West Bromwich Albion, Leeds play Burnley, and then finally Spurs play Wolves. So I could still fit Robertson into my wildcard draft. I currently don't have a Liverpool defender, but if they do perform well in that West Bromwich Albion game, I might be quite tempted to downgrade one of my forwards to Ford, Robertson, or maybe Trent Alexander-Arnold. The same goes for Rodrigo, so Rodrigo comes in slightly cheaper than Bamford, playing at a similar position and posting similar stats, some better stats in some departments even, so at a cheaper price he might be a nice alternative, because if you remember on the wild card, every single 0.1 matters, especially when we are bench boosting in Game Week 19. So if we can save a couple 0.1 millions from Bamford to Rodrigo, I'm going to be doing that, but I just want to make sure that he's assured in that starting 11 of Leeds before I do make the move. And then finally going on to Spurs versus Wolves, I'll be monitoring Son and Kane, because as I mentioned in the introduction to this video, a large talking point is going to be, should we own Son, should we own Kane, should we own both of them, or should we own neither of them? So I think this game is going to give some closure on that whole talking point, as it's pretty much the main dilemma in my wildcard and what I'm considering. But we'll be talking about this talking point a lot throughout the video, so let's get straight into it. So the first talking point we're going to be going over is, should you sell KDB? So in the Game Week 15 preview, I mentioned that to me it was a no-brainer to keep Kevin De Bruyne because of that Newcastle at home fixture. Unfortunately, he didn't actually produce anything, blanked in that one, just got the 3 points against Newcastle. City managed to win 2-0, but Kevin De Bruyne obviously wasn't involved in any of those goals, which is quite surprising, as I thought that he was one of the main talisman for them, but maybe City are looking to other options going forward since of their lack of attacking opportunities. And that's basically been the story of Man City this season. They just simply haven't been performing to their usual standards, and sides that they should be beating 4-0, 5-0, they usually go on to win 1-0 or 2-0. So that might be a Kevin De Bruyne fault. I don't really think so. I think that's more of a Man City fault, but unfortunately Kevin De Bruyne is just on the end of that, and we're looking to take him out. So this week, I do think we have to take Kevin De Bruyne out. The main reason being is there are other options that are performing better than him that have a double game week in Game Week 19. So you can see that Man City don't have a double, but they do have a fixture in Game Week 18. So if you do own Kevin De Bruyne and you're not going to be using a free hit in Game Week 18, maybe just keep him. But if you are in a wild card like me, or if you are using a chip in Game Week 19 and 18, then I definitely would ship him out, because we desperately need those funds for those other premium assets that have the double. So unfortunately it's going to be out for Kevin De Bruyne, but if you look at the fixtures there from Game Week 20 to 22, they have some really nice fixtures. So what we can do is from 16 to 19, we can monitor the situation with KDB. Maybe City perform really well over Game Week 18 and 19, and then we desperately have to bring him in. They have West Bromwich Albion, they have Sheffield United, then they face Burnley, which are really good fixtures, but you also have to look at the bigger picture here. Now City have generally struggled to break teams down that park the bus a little bit. I know they had that massive victory against Burnley in the home fixture, but maybe in this one they don't perform as well. And I mean, West Bromwich Albion, Sheffield United, Burnley, those are classic teams that have a very deep defensive line. So I'm just hoping that Man City can get a better attacking threat for Game Week 20, 21, 22, because then I definitely will bring Kevin De Bruyne straight back in after that whole double Game Week 19. So now going on to the main talking point of the video, it's going to be Son versus Kane. We're also going to be talking about, should you own both of these, should you own neither of them, and all that jazz. So as I mentioned, this is the main talking point in my wildcard, because Spurs don't have a double game week in double game week 19. And when I'm on a wildcard in Game Week 16, I basically want to stack my team with a full double game week side, even on that bench, so I can bench boost in Game Week 19. And when Spurs only have one fixture, it does hinder them a little bit. So quite a spanner in the works there because of the no double game week, but they do have a game week in Game Week 18. So for example, like Kevin De Bruyne, if you're not using your Fred in Game Week 18 and not using a chip in Game Week 19 and need to use those free transfers and you already own Son and Kane, I probably wouldn't take them out because the Game Week 19 fixture still looks quite good. Sheffield United away. It's going to be quite interesting to see how Spurs adapt to that because they usually are quite a counter-attacking side, and I don't think there's going to be many counter-attacking opportunities against the low-lying Sheffield United. But the fixtures above that are what we're going to be focusing on. So I want to focus on Game Week 16 and Game Week 17 because that's basically going to determine if I keep Son and Kane or if I lose one of them or if I lose both of them in my wildcard draft. So Fulham at home, Fulham have actually been playing quite a bit better recently than the start of the season. You can see there that they still have the 5th worst defense. I sorted this on the last 5 fixtures, so some teams obviously haven't played. They still play in Game Week 15, so just take these stats with that in mind. But Sheffield United, Crystal Palace, West Brom and Leeds have a worse defense than Fulham, but the 5th worst defense isn't the best in the world, so I still think that Spurs will win this. It just depends on if it's going to be worth using a free transfer in other areas than Kane or Son. So the fixture that I am really targeting though is that Leeds fixture. Bottom of the defensive stats there, Leeds have the worst defense statistically in the Premier League, and the reason why I really like this fixture is that I think that Leeds are going to leave a massive amount of space in behind their centre backs, and Son loves to kind of violate that space. So I think that Son is going to be a great option to go for. So that kind of opens the debate. Maybe I should get Son rather than Kane because I am focusing that Leeds fixture. There are other captaincy options in Game Week 16, and that's also a main talking point, is you got to look at these two options and whether you want to captain them in Game Week 16 and 17. So maybe Game Week 16, we look at a Mo Salah. Maybe he's a better option than a Harry Kane. But I definitely think in Game Week 17, I will be looking at a Son captain. So that maybe leads me to own Son and not Kane because Kane is a little bit more expensive, so maybe I need that budget to upgrade one of my other departments. Already spoke about Robertson, Trent Alexander-Arnold. Maybe if I downgrade Harry Kane to someone like Vardy or Martial, I could afford a Liverpool defender, and then Son comes in that midfield slot where there are a couple of spaces. So that could be an interesting thing to go by. Purely on the fixtures, I think that I would target Son more just because of that Leeds at home fixture, but I think come Game Week 19, I don't know if I'd want both of these in my side. I might use those 2 free transfers between now and Game Week 19 to take Kane and Son out and maybe bring in someone like Mane because of that double game week that Liverpool do have. So from a fixture point of view, I do think this slightly favors Son just because of the opponents that they're facing in Game Week 17 and the amount of space that I think he will be led in behind. So go on to the statistics between Son and Kane. So what I've done here is I've compared these two over attacking or more general stats, and I got Harry Kane in blue and Son in red. And you can see there, although Harry Kane is getting a lot of shots, I don't really think that has turned into that many goals. So you know Son has scored a lot more goals than Harry Kane, but I think that's purely down to the fact that Son is a clinical finisher. If you look at his XG, he's heavily overperforming his XG. I think he has 11 goals and his XG was saying about 6, so almost double there with that overperforming of his XG. But the thing I still like about Kane is a lot of people have been talking about how he's more of a midfielder this season, more of an assister, but if you look at the stats there on shots, he's getting so many more shots than Son is, which leads me to believe that that might not be as true as possible. Maybe Harry Kane is taking some pots from outside the box, but then shots in box are still higher than Son. So from a stats point of view, I do think that I slightly favor Harry Kane, even though Son might be a little bit cheaper. But when I compare the fixtures and the stats, I still am a little bit led towards Son because just of those fixtures and the reasons that I spoke about in the previous talking point. But I think both of these two are good options, and I can honestly see myself going into the wildcard with both of these two players, and then in Game Week 17 maybe downgrading Harry Kane and then upgrading Son before the Game Week 19 double game week. So the final talking point we're going to be going over is just a quick update and my general thinking about the wildcard. I wanted to do this because a lot of people are asking me when I'm making changes, what I'm doing with my price rises, price drops. So if you look on the screen here, you compare this to basically the wildcard draft. I did do a video yesterday and the only player that rose in price was McCarthy. So I have McCarthy in my lineup since last night. So I managed to get that 0.1 price rise. But this is the wildcard draft that has been updated. So a lot of people were mentioning, and it was a mistake on my behalf, so I do apologize. I simply took the Game Week 15 wildcard draft and posted it on screen, but there had been a lot of price changes, so a lot of people couldn't actually afford that even though they had the same selling value as me. So what I've done here is I've updated the draft. Something to mention though is this draft is still 0.1 million out, so I couldn't afford this draft actually, but I think with the price rises happening tonight, we could potentially get that 0.1. If we don't get that 0.1, no problem there. We can maybe downgrade Charlie Taylor to someone like Matt Lowton, or maybe we drop Sufal to Balbuena if we really need the cash. As you can see, I still have Son and Kane, and what I wanted to talk to you about is the whole Vardy situation. So a lot of people wanted to bring in Vardy and have already brought Vardy in for Game Week 16, but you must remember that there's a quick turnaround from Game Week 15 to 16. I think they play on Monday night, so that's about 48 hours rest. And Jamie Vardy has, throughout the season, been having a little bit of an injury, and they've had to monitor the situation. Basically, what happens is I don't think he trains for the first couple of days of the week. Then he trains about 1 or 2 days before the match, and that's perfectly fine for him because he can easily adjust to that. But I don't think in a 48-hour period he might play against Crystal Palace. So that's something to keep in mind, and that's why I still have Kane in my draft, because I think Jamie Vardy's the one I want. Martial you could also get, but I'm just worried about the whole Cavani situation there. He seems to be getting into a little bit more form, and he might take that center forward spot. It depends on what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is going to do, but Kane right now is in my squad, and then maybe before Game Week 17 I can bring in Jamie Vardy, and then before Game Week 19 I take Son out for another replacement. So that's basically the thinking I've done on the Son versus Kane situation. It's just because of Jamie Vardy's kind of a little bit of an injury there, and I don't think he's going to start in Game Week 16. Otherwise, if there is news that he will start in Game Week 16, then I think I will go for Jamie Vardy instead of Harry Kane. The other option I have gone for is Reece James over Thiago Silva. There was some surprise news there from Frank Lampard starting both Chilwell and Reece James after saying they're going to be a doubt for the next 2 weeks. So a little bit of surprise there, maybe a little bit of mind games there from Frank Lampard, but that's definitely a good sign for our FPL wildcard, because Reece James does come in a little bit cheaper than Thiago Silva. Didn't have the best game against Arsenal, but I still think he's the first choice right back, and that's why I've gone for him, because he's just got loads of attacking threat, and I'll always own a Chelsea defender if they do have a double game week and they are quite nailed on. So this has been the updates. You can see there I've also included Justin here because he's expected to have a price rise, and there are some other options. The hard situation is going to be Johnston. He's rumored to go up in price tonight, but so is Martinez, so we kind of have to make a decision there if we rather bank the 0.1 on Martinez selling price, or we just go for that Johnston price rise, because I think both of them are going to kind of even each other out. So the final talking point we're going to be going over is captaincy. So the captaincy decision is actually quite wide open this week. Not as cut and dry as maybe a Mo Salah in Game Week 15, but I still think Mo Salah is a great shout to go for in Game Week 16 against Newcastle away. Now Newcastle put on a good shift against Man City, maybe a little bit fortunate to not concede more there, but I think Mo Salah will definitely be my captain going into Game Week 16. Might lead to Harry Kane as well if I do keep him for the Game Week 16 wildcard, as they do face Fulham at home, and I think any side that faces Fulham, you got to look at maybe captaining that option, especially with the form that Harry Kane and Son have been in. But then also Bruno Fernandes, I mean, he faces Wolves at home. Wolves got smashed by Liverpool, maybe they'll get smashed by Man United, and then Bruno Fernandes should do well. And that's the thing I love about Bruno Fernandes this season, is that if Man United score, he's basically always involved, a main talisman for them, incredible form, and I think he's going to have a great FPL season. So maybe Salah and Bruno are your set and forget captaincies. Maybe you just have to captain a player with red and they're always going to return. But I think I'll go for Mo Salah here, go for the red side of Merseyside instead of the red side of Manchester for Game Week 16's captain. So this is basically a wrap up the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like it if you did, and subscribe if you're new and have not subscribed yet. I'll be checking you guys tomorrow for maybe a video or a deadline stream, depending on how the price rises go. But I'll be checking you on my Twitter as well for further updates. I'm going to be signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers. Bye.